Hi, I'm Lauren Gleason, registered dietitian, board certified specialist in kidney nutrition, and today I'm talking about whether the 24-hour urine sodium result in a 24-hour urine is accurate. So if you suffer from kidney stones, you have hopefully completed a 24-hour urine test and maybe already watched my video on how to interpret your test. And when you looked at the sodium, you might have been surprised at how high it was and questioned whether the test was really that accurate. So in this video, I'm going to walk through some of the nuances of the sodium results. First, let's look at the test results and convert the results into something that estimates your sodium intake for the day. So your 24-hour urine test will list out your urine result in millimoles per liter, and the reference range, which is what some people think of as the normal range, is usually 50 to 150 millimoles per day. So below is a conversion of how much sodium these results might equate to. So 155 millimoles is roughly 3,450 milligrams of sodium per day, and then all the way down to 50 millimoles, which is about 1,150 milligrams of sodium per day. So your result is probably somewhere in between these numbers, but you should get an idea of where you're at looking at these numbers. This is a pretty wide range of sodium levels, and 3,450 milligrams of sodium per day is a lot of sodium. I wouldn't necessarily consider that ideal, but it is certainly within the normal range because a lot of people do eat a lot of sodium. The recommended daily allowance that most Americans should be aiming for is 2,300 milligrams, or about 100 millimoles per day. If your urine sodium levels are higher than 100 millimoles per day, you should consider making some changes to your diet to get that number lower. Even though that number is probably showing within the normal range, depending on whether or not you have other medical conditions, you might even benefit from aiming closer to 65 millimoles per day, which is going to be about 1,500 milligrams for the day in terms of how much sodium you eat. But you might be looking at these numbers and thinking, there's no way that that's accurate. I don't eat that much sodium. Is this really accurate? And yes, it is pretty accurate, but there are some quirks to it. So for one, there's a chance that your actual salt intake is higher than what's been listed there on that last side. So we do lose some sodium in our bowel movements, and we do lose some salt in our normal day-to-day sweating. So you probably eat a little more sodium than what's showing. If you sweat a lot, maybe you do intense exercise, maybe you live in a hot climate, maybe you do physical labor outside, so you probably sweat out a good bit of salt. In fact, it wouldn't be unheard of, for certain professional athletes who sweat, a lot during their games. Some of them lose like an entire day's worth of sodium in 1 hour. Manual laborers who do work in extreme heat, they can lose 2 days worth of sodium during their workday. So if you fall into this category of someone who sweats a lot, then your urine sodium is not a good approximation of how much sodium you eat. You probably eat a lot more. But it is still a good approximation of your risk for developing a stone. So if your urine sodium is higher than 100, you're eating too much sodium. That means that you aren't sweating out as much sodium as you think. So I recommend taking a close look at how much you're eating and think about how you could start to cut back. If you're unsure or you think you might fall into the category of someone who loses a lot of sodium through sweat, you might want to work closely with your doctor or your dietitian. And hey, I'm biased. I think everyone should be working with a dietitian for kidney stones. So the test isn't going to be perfectly capture your sodium intake if you sweat a lot. Another way that the test might be a little off is if your sodium intake varies a lot from day to day. So sodium isn't really stored in the body to any large degree. So what, goes in, it's got to come out. And for most people, 95% of the sodium they eat is going to come out in their urine. So a 24-hour urine is a pretty good approximation of how much salt that you're getting, on a regular basis. The catch is that your 24-hour urine test result for sodium doesn't necessarily reflect the most recent 24 hours, especially if the few days before the test were different from test day. And the reason for this is that your kidneys take a few days to adjust to any changes in your sodium intake. So, for example, if you did normally eat about 2,000 milligrams of sodium per day, but the day before you started your test, you decided to go out for some Chinese food and you ended up eating, 5,000 milligrams of sodium in one day, that's going to make your test day look higher because your body's still trying to get rid of that extra 3,000 milligrams above normal that you ate. This is why a lot of people notice that they feel bloated the day or so after eating a high sodium meal. So if you've ever gone out to eat and you notice the next day that, your wedding band won't come off, Your kidneys aren't able to sort of instantly adjust the flow of sodium out of your body. So you will temporarily retain water along with sodium while your body tries to correct things, sort of hence the swollen fingers. If you weren't eating any differently from normal for the few days leading up to your test and your results were still high, might be time to take a harder look at what you're eating. Sodium sneaks into just about every packaged food out there. So restaurants and food service establishments are teeming with sodium. Just because you never touch a salt shaker doesn't mean that you aren't getting too much sodium in your diet. So start keeping a detailed log of everything you put in your mouth. Be specific about the brand and serving size, and you might be surprised at how quickly it adds up. If you still got questions about kidney stones, feel free to leave a comment on this video on YouTube. I do read the comments and I use them to help me figure out what videos to post next. If you found this video helpful, I'd love it if you gave it a thumbs up. And if you want to learn more about kidney stone prevention or get recipes designed for kidney stone prevention, you can sign up for my free newsletter. You should see a pop up on the screen somewhere inviting you to sign up, and then I'll include a link below this video. So hope to see you soon.